Hey there, it's Andrea, and welcome to the Voice of Influence podcast. Today I have with me Dr. Barb Daubenspeck. She heads up the Bellevue University's Master of Science in Clinical Mental Health Counseling. The Nebraska Counseling Association just honored Dr. Daubenspeck as its Counselor of the Year. Congratulations to you on that award. What a beautiful thing.
Thank you.
And welcome to the podcast.
I'm happy to be here.
So, Barb, according to the data from the Kaiser Family Foundation, 47% of the US population in 2022 was living in a mental health workforce shortage area. And then I was looking up the Commonwealth Fund as of March 2023. 160 million Americans live in areas with mental health professional shortages, with over 8,000 more professionals needed to ensure an adequate supply. I'm sure these are numbers that are very familiar to you.
Absolutely. Yes.
They're very concerning statistics. And we both live in Nebraska. I'm sure that Nebraska is part of this.
Absolutely.
Is that the case? What are you seeing, and what are your concerns, or what are your thoughts on this topic?
There definitely is a mental health professional shortage at the moment. And I don't think that issue is going to resolve anytime soon, unfortunately. We are seeing a larger influx in our particular program, at least, of students who are interested in getting the training that they need in clinical mental health, which is encouraging. But there certainly is more of a need than there is. It's a supply-demand situation, and there's just not enough mental health professionals to go around. However, I think with the advent of telehealth and alternative, there are different ways to connect now than there have been in the past, and I think that there's a lot of potential there for services to be available, especially in rural areas where there may not be, a clinical mental health counseling office, but there certainly are individuals who would benefit from services.
Yeah. I'm sure I know there are limitations to not being in person, but at the same time, it seems like where we are with, technology and just, worker shortages everywhere. It's not surprising that it would happen in the mental health field as well. And so it seems like we should be able to figure something out. Do you have any thoughts on what makes more of a telehealth kind of situation work?
Really, it has to do with the comfortability of the client. I will say that I have seen some clients actually open up more in a telehealth session than they might sitting physically in the office, which has been kind of interesting. And you do get to see a different glimpse of someone's life when you're doing telehealth. I work with a lot of children and teenagers and young adults in my clinical work. And I have seen people's bedrooms. I have met their family. I've met a lot of pets. I've met a lot of pets doing telehealth. But there also is, there can be concerns sometimes with privacy. Especially for actually maybe more so for adults. Who are concerned that, if they're speaking about an issue that they have, could their spouse or their children overhear what they have to say, and so they feel more comfortable coming into the office. So there are some situations where it works out very well, and some where it can be a challenge, and depending as well on the issue that the client is presenting with. If there's someone that I'm really worried about in terms of the level of depression that they are showing, or I feel better when I can have eyes on them in the office and really talk through face to face. And I've this thing that I do with my clients where I just look them in the eye, and especially if I have a feeling someone is having some suicidal thoughts, like to create that safe space where they can really be open about what's really happening with them. And also so I can look them in the eye and have them promise me that I'm going to see them the next week, or that they are going to follow the plan that, that we have created together. So if there's someone that I'm really very concerned about, I do much prefer to see them in the office, to give them that space where they can really be honest about those feelings that they're having, where I can read all of their body language.
Mm.
One of the downfalls of telehealth, of course, you only see right from the shoulders up, and I don't get to see, I can't see the foot tapping or, other types of nonverbals that might tell me someone's really uncomfortable or that there's maybe more going on than they're sharing.
Hmm. Yeah, and I would imagine that when one of your ways of connecting is that eye connection, that it's a little complicated. Like even as I'm trying to look at you, I'm like kind of vacillating between my camera and you because I know that it looks like I'm looking at you when I'm looking at my camera,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm really looking at you when I'm looking a little ways down, and that is complicated. That's complicated for connection.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But then on the other hand, you have other people who are not as comfortable saying what they really feel and might feel more free when they don't
Yeah.
have to look you in the eye. They can, admit that something's going on or can talk more about maybe the anxiety that they're feeling or whatever might be happening.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that it's an option. I'm glad that it's becoming, more of an option.
Yes, absolutely.
So what are you seeing in terms of numbers for your program at Bellevue University? So you are training mental health practitioners,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Are you seeing enough people coming in? Do you have are you full? Is your program full, or are you concerned that there aren't enough people coming in, or you can't get enough people through? What is that like?
Right now, we have the opposite problem. We have a very fast growing program. So we are a CACREP-accredited program. So we are nationally accredited, and that accreditation is recognized by licensure boards throughout the United States.
Mhm.
And we have students from all over the country and actually all over the world in our program. And we have grown quite a bit. When I came on as the program director about roughly 10 years ago, we had about 200 students in our program. And right now we have more like 750 students in our program. So we are scrambling right now actually to hire more faculty, to be able
Yeah.
to provide more support for those students. We have important responsibilities as counselor educators that are, we have gatekeeping responsibilities. We need to make sure that the students who are coming through our program are graduating really with all the skills and information that they need to get started, that we can feel good about, our graduates being out there providing these important services. So we have very much have an eye on, how do we balance this large influx of students and how do we, still maintain those gatekeeping responsibilities, all while keeping in mind that, the shortage across the country of mental health professionals and the importance of these people making it through our program and, going back to make a difference in their communities. So
Mm.
it's definitely been, it's a challenge,
Hmm.
a
Wow,
good challenge.
fast growing, I would say
Yes.
so.
Yes,
Yeah.
very much so. We have 17 full-time faculty, and we are in the process of hiring up to 4 more. So
Hmm. Well,
mhm,
congratulations on that. I mean,
thank you.
that's a really big deal.
It is exciting.
Is that part of why you were called the Nebraska Counseling Association Counselor of the Year? Like, what is that? Like what? How do you earn that title?
I don't know. It's a mystery. Actually, one of my colleagues in the program is highly involved with the Nebraska Counseling Association. I'm a member. I've been a member for years as well, but I was very honored. She nominated me and wrote a very nice letter about, really my clinical skills as well as support of the profession in the state. So I think both elements played a role, and it definitely a big honor. I was very surprised and humbled for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it sounds like it's well deserved. That's awesome. So, why do you think that young people should consider going into the mental health field?
I think going into the field is something that, well, many people have a desire to help others.
Yeah.
And I think that this is one way that they can do. It's a tough question to answer because it really has to be something that the person is driven to do. Like I wouldn't want to talk someone into becoming a mental health counselor. That would not be beneficial for them. It would not be beneficial for the profession. But if someone's having that little pull of, I want to give back, I want to do something more, we often get individuals who actually are, considering a career change. They are older. Many of our students are older,
Yeah.
and they might have been, I'm thinking of a student we have right now who is a nurse who has decided that they want to pursue mental health counseling. We have several students who work for Disney, who were able to take advantage of a tuition assistance program to become to become a mental health professional, be a student in our program. I wouldn't want to talk someone into it, but I would want to encourage anyone who has that feeling of they want to be able to do more, they want to be able to be present for other people. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what a mental health professional does, what a counselor does. A counselor is not an advice giver. I do not, unfortunately, have all of the answers as a counselor. I do not know what you should do. I don't know the right decision for my clients. But what I can do is create an environment where they can explore the issues that they are having, where they can have an opportunity to process through, to think about their life differently, to see maybe new possibilities for themselves. I like to say that, as a counselor, I might be the expert on counseling, but I'm never the expert in that room with the client. The client is the expert. They know their life. They know what they really want and what they really need. And that comes out over time. It's just, sometimes we just need that ear. So, when I hear from someone who's applying to our program, I'm reading their essay and they're talking about just this desire to be present for other people and to be able to help, then I know that person is probably going to be a really good fit.
You mentioned processing, giving people that space and opportunity to process. And this question came to my mind. What about the people that don't like to process? Not for
Yeah,
becoming a counselor, but for even to go to counseling or to even
right.
process things.
Uh-huh.
I'm imagining that those folks probably haven't gotten to this point in the episode. If they don't like to process, they're probably not listening to this conversation, but
Right.
people like us might know people
Mhm.
who don't like to do that. What is a way that we can invite them to think a little more deeply, to go ahead and do some of that processing, even if it's not in a counseling environment?
Right. I think just, being naturally curious with those individuals. People don't like, I mean, there is something about walking in to see a professional and it doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter what your background is. It's kind of nerve-wracking to walk in and talk with a stranger and, open up and share about your most personal experiences and thoughts and feelings. But I think a way you can help people to warm up to that is by yourself, just as an individual, as a colleague, as a supervisor, whatever, being open and asking about what's going on and actually listening, not just that casual "how are you" that we all do, which we know no, people don't really want to know how you are. They just want you to say you're fine and move on to the next pleasantry. But asking, how are you? No, how are you really? How are you doing with things? Or maybe sharing a little bit about your own feelings about, I'm really feeling stressed out with all of these things we've got going on right now. How are you handling it? And just opening up those avenues of conversation. Also, not all counseling is processing. So I think sometimes, I am a person-centered counselor. And so I do tend to use this relational model when I'm working with clients, but there are other kinds of counseling too. So when people are looking for a counselor, they want to find somebody who fits the need that they have. If you're not, really don't want to spend a lot of time delving into your past, you don't want to see a psychodynamic therapist who's going to want to talk about your childhood and write all those old cliches. Tell me about your relationship with your mother, and they want to go all the way back. There are other types of therapy. CBT comes to mind, cognitive behavior therapy, where you really are you're examining your feelings to some extent, but more your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors and how they relate to each other. So how can you break the cycle of maybe you've fallen into a pattern of behavior that's not helpful, or a pattern of thinking that's not helpful? We can, sit down and sort of break apart, look at some of the cognitive errors people make, look at some of the different behavioral choices there could be, or different ways to understand the emotions that come up. A lot of people don't have good emotional literacy. They don't know the language. They don't know how to even talk about how they're feeling. When I start working with new clients, it's one of the places we often will begin. It's like, okay, well, so you're maybe you're 50 years old and you have no idea how to communicate how you're feeling other than I'm feeling anxious. Okay, well, what does that mean? What does that look like? And, a lot of counseling is education too. So it's talking about the physiological side of mental well-being. It's talking about, how you can manage those things. A lot of people are dealing with anxiety these days, anxiety and depression, like the number one and two reasons that clients tend to show up in therapy. So let's talk about how does the body handle new situations or stressful situations, because a lot of times understanding that helps the client to realize that there's nothing wrong with you because you're experiencing anxiety. We have these rush of hormones and this adrenaline, for a reason. Like, our feelings serve a purpose. And so becoming more aware of that and, trying to, realize that we have this fight or flight or freeze or fawn response, and understanding what that is and how we can maybe interrupt or break that cycle, that physiological cycle. One thing that I see when people come into counseling for the first time, they feel like there's something wrong with them. It's like, there's really nothing wrong with you. It just might be that you could use some, different coping skills, or you need to understand more about what's happening when you're having the emotional experiences that you're having, because emotions are just one piece of it.
It does seem like it takes a lot for somebody to get over the hump and actually go to counseling or actually work on something. Seems like there's a lot of it, like a lot of times it just takes that extra amount of pain or something to cause somebody to actually take a step.
Absolutely. It's not an easy thing to do, but it can be so incredibly beneficial. And it doesn't have to take years and years either. I think people have the idea somehow that you're going into therapy, that means that you are going to be in therapy for the rest of your life. It could be a very short time. I see clients in therapy who might just maybe they're having a particular issue. Something's going on with their family, or something's going on at work, or maybe they lost their job. They're going through some short-term stressor that's really impacting them. We might only need to meet for, 4 or 6 sessions, and you might be feeling a lot better. And like, you have, the tools that you need. There's a lot of variability. The client's always in charge of that too. So you're not committing to forever
Yeah,
just because you show up in therapy.
that's right. That's right. And you don't have to wait until like you feel like you're going to break before you
Right.
go to counseling, or you have broken and feel that way inside or something. Like, you can be a little proactive, and that can be incredibly helpful.
Absolutely, especially if you are someone who's maybe a little bit more isolated. Maybe you don't have, I don't know, there are certain times in our lives and periods and phases where we are focused on family, or we're really, really hyper focused on work, or we've got, other things happening that are taking our time and attention. And it can be helpful to have someone outside of all of that just to, be present for you. And it doesn't have to be a crisis.
That's
Um,
right.
yeah.
The people that are listening to this podcast are typically they're listening because they're leaders at work, and or they want to be, they're aspiring to have a voice of influence, essentially. Um, what can institutions and businesses do to help alleviate and address the mental health crisis? I mean, you can't just provide counseling, a counselor in-house, that would be great, or whatever. I
Right.
mean, maybe that's not even ethical, I don't even know. But I'm sure that there are even things that they can do both structurally and interpersonally that would be helpful. Can you address that?
But from my perspective, I think the single most helpful thing is helping individuals to build connections. A lot of the work that we're doing is remote or hybrid type work. We're not physically in the same space as much, but finding ways to connect employees with each other, to connect individuals with one another formally, and, encouraging those informal connections as well. Um, it's easy to feel lonely. It's easy to feel isolated, like you're the only one who is struggling, or like you don't have anyone to process I don't know what just happened in the Zoom meeting we were in or whatever it might be. So I think finding ways to encourage those relationships is really important, whether that's through like peer-to-peer mentoring, whether that's even management meeting more regularly with other employees and like in a more helpful as opposed to evaluative way, taking the time to not making every meeting about just pushing the agenda, which I know when I run a faculty meeting, I have that tendency to. I'm like, I have these 6 things. We have to get through these 6 things. But some of the most important work that happens in that meeting is the collaboration that goes on, among individuals. So making sure that you leave space for that, for those spontaneous ideas, for just the processing and sharing with each other, I think is really important.
Do you have a definition of connection? I mean, connection is such this like, does it mean that I need to talk to somebody else, or is there something deeper to that? Now, I have personal, opinions about that or thoughts about this, but I'm so curious what your thoughts are on what makes a meaningful connection?
That's a really great question. I hadn't really thought about a specific definition. When I think about a meaningful connection, I'm thinking about a place where I feel like my values are understood or are accepted, where I feel like I'm not alone, that there's someone who is listening to what, not just hearing, but listening to what I have to say. I feel like I'm part of something that's greater than myself. And I think, when it comes to work, we are all looking for that sense of, connection. We want to feel like we have something to offer and that what we have to offer is being recognized. So I think that, that's a really important part. And when it comes to like when I think about myself as a program director with all of these faculty I'm working with, I work really hard to try to find it, and not just find, but, give voice to the contributions that different people on my faculty are making. Also looking for their passion areas and finding ways that I can bring those out to the benefit of my students and to the benefit of my colleagues. I have a faculty member, for instance, who is really interested in research, and we're primarily a teaching institution, and our focus really is on, educating these future counselors. But she has a really strong interest in research, and so, I was able to, in talking with her about that, I'm like, okay, well, so how can you do more with that? Because certainly research skills are important, and all of our students as mental health professionals are going to use research to inform their practice. It's something important for them to know about. She came up with this idea of having a student research symposium. And so I was like, yes, run with that. And she created this symposium. We are going to have our 4th annual symposium coming up in the spring. Really excited about that. Students are engaged with it. She's really engaged with it. Like I just saw a little spark come up in her, as she had a chance to work on that. Another colleague really wanted to create a book discussion group for our students. And so he put together this book club. It's been running for about a year and a half. And like students who are interested are pumped about it. But it's like, he's very excited about it because it's something that, he has like just this drive and interest in. It's his passion area. So I think, again, part of that connection is having our contributions recognized and also being given opportunities to do things that we're passionate about.
You just kind of outlined part of part of a model that we use. It's called dynamics of influence model, and the one of the areas is to increase agency, personal
Mhm.
agency at work.
Yeah.
And then the other goal is to also be in alignment with the structure of the companies. But so a little bit of sociology there, but but the agency piece, it's credibility, opportunity, and acknowledgement, and all those things. So it's really it's good to hear that you also see that as being a way of connecting. And that's so important.
Absolutely. I think it's important that people feel valued for
Yeah.
what they have to bring to the table, and they're on your team for a reason. Like you saw something in them or you see something in them, and it's easy to focus on the problems, the issues that come up, and oh, how am I going to handle this complaint or that issue that's come up with this person? And sometimes it takes much more intentionality to remember to acknowledge the things that are going well, which is the vast majority of things.
If people could see that other people see them, they see and they see, and they are also acknowledging not just that you did something, but the impact of it. That's that really says something about the connection that you can make with somebody.
I think so too.
So we're also looking a lot at Gen Z, younger employees that are coming into the workforce now and their unique needs. I'm curious if you see anything in particular as as these younger folks are coming into the workforce, they're growing up, they're becoming adults.
Mhm.
What in particular do you see that may be different, maybe this similar? I don't know, some characteristics that you're noticing. Do you notice anything in particular about this incoming generation?
Well, we definitely know that they are very tech savvy and very connected, right? They're considered like the digital generation or the
Digitally connected,
right,
not
digitally.
not
No, not
necessarily
not even
meaningfully connected.
personally connected necessarily, but digitally connected. They are online. They know what's going on. One of the things that surprised me just in reading and learning about this generation is their not just the use of social media, which they use social media much more than any of the other generations to date, but the way that they use it to collect information and to answer questions. Where other generations, my generation, I'm Generation X, I'll just say, I'm going to go to Google and like look for the authoritative answer to some question I have. These guys are more likely, Gen Z is more likely to go to social media and, they're going to TikTok to see what people are saying and Instagram. Those are the big ones. And of course, YouTube, if there's some kind of, particular specialty related to what they want to know about. But they're not the Google masters. That's just not, they're more interested in what are other people saying is the right answer here, as opposed to the definitive right answer, which is a really just different way of thinking about information and fact finding.
Yeah. And I mean, we all lived through the pandemic, but they kind of lived through it at a different formative time in their life. How
Yeah.
do you see that impacting the way that they are now?
Well, I think it impacts very much their expectations for what for work-life balance
Yes.
in particular, like very much willing to they give voice to the fact that they want to be able to have flexibility to live their life. Their life is not just work. There's a lot more. They want the ability to work from home. They want the ability to, determine more about their own day-to-day schedule in their life. I think that's very different. They advocate for that.
They
And
do.
yeah,
We're
uh,
seeing that too.
yeah,
We've done a number of interviews with people that age and with people that work with folks that are that age. And what we're hearing a lot is they're very clear about their boundaries, their
yes.
work-life balance, and their boundaries are like this really big deal.
Mhm. Which I think is something we can learn from.
Yeah, I think they also saw, they probably have seen us abuse
Yes,
our
probably,
work-life boundaries
right?
and are saying, nope, not
Not
me.
me. And they also like, I thought it was interesting that when it comes to social media, are using it for inspiration for their lives, like what they want to do, what they want their life to look like, and again, advocating for that. So they want to travel and have adventures.
Yeah.
And not only do they want to do it, but they're doing it. They're like finding ways. Okay, well, I can work remotely. I can work at the beach. I can work out in the mountains. I'll log in, I'll do my work, and then I'll go skiing in the afternoon. Or I will, they're finding ways to get those needs met that are really kind of unconventional.
It's interesting because then you kind of, as a business owner, you kind of think about, okay, but what about engagement? do you care about your work?
Mhm.
Um, what are your thoughts on helping them to care about their work too?
Well, from what I've seen in the research and what I've seen working with my own younger colleagues, they do very much care about their work, but they need to understand why they should care about their work.
Mm,
So it's not enough to just, give them delegate a task. They need to know, how does this fit into the big picture? What is the value of this task? Why do I need to do it? How does it fit into the overall goals for the program or the unit or whatever? They want to know what the meaning of the work they're being asked to do is. And I think that's just not something you see in older generations. You're just, you're told to do some task. And so you're going to do the task, right? You're not stepping back and asking these questions. But again, I think that that could be a frustration probably for some management. It also can be, a strength, because it does force you to ask that other question. Okay, so do I really need you to do this? And if I do, I should be able to articulate what the value is of what I'm asking you to do and why I'm asking you to do it. Like, you
right.
have expertise in this area, and I really appreciate that. And I want to know, I want you working on this project because I know you will add X, Y, and Z. And again, it's helping them to be seen and recognized as individuals for what those contributions are.
Yeah. Even if it is a supportive role,
Yes.
that's a tough one, because if it's a
Mhm.
supportive role, then you have to understand the impact that you have on the goal, instead of just, oh, they're making me do this when this is part of their job or whatever.
Right. Right.
Yeah. That's interesting. Um, so okay, this is another thing that has been uh, that I'm seeing as attention. I'm probably feeling it a little bit, personally and professionally, seeing it a lot. But with this greater emphasis that we have right now on mental health, which is great. There's more awareness around like narcissism, control, high control groups,
Mhm.
toxic environments. That word toxic is very, toxic, and narcissism. I mean, like, both of those are just like buzzwords at this point.
Mhm. Yep.
Um, but I think that there's also some confusion around the implementation of, like, okay, so I've got these personal boundaries and I'm taking offense to things um at work, or in general. So here's the thing, like, you and I both know that relationships are messy.
Right. Life is
They
messy.
are messy, and work is full of relationships.
Yeah.
So we can't just, like, label something as toxic and run away from it all the time, although there are times when that makes sense and is probably the
Mhm.
healthy thing to do. Um, so I guess one of the things that I'm exploring and wanting your opinion about, or perspective on, is this tension between how do, leaders be sensitive to the mental health needs of the people that they work with, while
Mhm.
at the same time somehow encouraging grit and resilience in relationships, so
Mhm.
that we can keep working together and keep moving forward. What do you see as that, how to
That's
manage that?
a tough one. Yeah, that's a really tough one. I think from my perspective, encouraging communication, helping people to articulate what exactly is happening here. I do think there are certain words that are being thrown around related to mental health that really are not an accurate reflection. It's not a toxic environment because somebody said one thing that, made you upset. And people are going to say things that are going to make you upset. But again, that's sort of, I think that feeds back from like TikTok and some of the other social media where it really, I mean, you can find whole long, just look for hashtag narcissism or hashtag toxic. You will find a million videos.
And lots of
Yeah,
outrage.
yes, lots of outrage. And I do think there's some, the need to explore what's happening, to try to actively problem solve, but also to stay focused on the problem
Mm,
as opposed to on the individuals. What I take issue is with when it comes to like words like toxic environment. It's not really a toxic environment. There's something going on in the environment that is creating a problem. So let's figure out what that item is and address that item, or there's something that that person is doing that you are interpreting as narcissistic, but you really don't know what that is about. So let's address that behavior as
Mm,
opposed to addressing, traits or the attributions we are making.
mm.
I think we've got to just bring it all the way back to the beginning of, okay, what is that behavior, and helping people, again, it goes back to that emotional literacy, helping people understand what is happening for them. And I know supervisors are not, or directors are not mental health professionals, but and it can sometimes be frustrating and feel like you are handling a preschool interaction between individuals. But again, very simply, so what is the problem and what do you propose as the solution? And empowering people to come up with their solution. I
Ooh,
think
I
a lot
like
of
that.
times people know what they want, but they may not ever come right out and say what they need or want.
Mm,
So empowering them to, okay, so tell me, what do you see needs to happen in this situation? And not necessarily about the other person, but about the situation. It's
yeah,
the answer is not, I never want to work with A, B, and C again. The
exactly.
the answer is, when I work with these individuals, it would be, these people get off track. So it would be helpful for me, if we're going to work on a group project, to have a project plan that we follow for each meeting or whatever it is. So I think focusing on the issues as opposed to the individuals helps to sort of bring in some of that. There's a lot of emotional energy that goes around when, if you feel like somebody is attacking you, let's say you're the individual who's being called narcissistic, or you're the manager who's created a toxic environment. That's very personal,
Oh yeah.
and it feels very personal. Like,
Yeah.
let's take the personal out here and look at what's actually happening.
Yep.
And I think when you do that and you empower people to solve problems, it does help to build that, hopefully helps to begin to build some of that resilience, so they can reach out and begin to advocate. Oh, it's possible for me to make some suggestions here. Oh, somebody is open to listening to what I think needs to be done differently here. Um, I think that could be a very healthy way of handling that.
Yeah. And I think as people get older, as kids get older, and I suppose I don't know a ton about brain development, but I know enough that they're not fully developed for mid 20s or something.
Right. Yep.
And so the black and whiteness of relationships, being able to see nuance, and that not everything is just whether or not you like this person. You have to work with them. So what do you do to solve the problem and not the person? Like,
Yes.
kind of basically was what you're saying.
Yeah.
Um,
Because you can't solve the person.
yeah,
We're not
you
going to
can't
change
solve the
it.
person.
It's hard enough to change when you want to change yourself.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
cannot change someone else, and it's not fair to have that expectation.
And so it's not, and I think that's one of the other things that we're seeing with the social media is the divide, is this polarization of individuals. So you're either on their team or my team,
Right.
regardless of what the topic is. And so I think they're bringing that into the workplace too. And so I think if somehow or there has to be this ability to turn toward, like, away from looking at each other and toward the problem,
Right.
and feel like you're on the same team. And I
Hmm.
think that it takes a bit for us to get there. I think there are times when it just takes longer. It can't happen in an instant. And so if managers and supervisors can at least, like, be willing to realize that they are mentors in this situation, that they're helping, guiding people through this process of getting to that relational resilience. I'm sorry, I'm just like, how do we do this? How do we help everybody figure this out?
I know it'd be nice if we could figure it all out.
But I think those are really important. I think that also impacts performance improvement. So there's inevitably going to be growth
Yes.
inside of your job. And so nobody is doing anything perfectly. We're
Right.
all growing, we're all learning, but if you're used to getting A's and then you get to work and you find out, I think you use the word evaluative kind of
Yes.
conversations,
Hmm.
that those evaluative conversations end up making, like, keeping them in that I've got to get the A perspective, instead of got to grow. I'm here to grow and there's opportunity. What are your thoughts about how to take that conversation instead of making it evaluative and turning it into more of a growth mindset conversation?
I I would say going back to what we were talking about earlier, helping people to figure out, what is their passion? What do they wish that they could be contributing? And how can I help them to create a path forward in that direction? And so sometimes that means that, I know that eventually you would like to be a director in this area. In order to be successful in that role, it's going to be really important that you have good, I don't know, time management strategies. And so let's talk about how we can improve what's happening with your time management to help you begin to take a step toward this longer term goal that you have. Then it becomes more of a supportive conversation and less of a judgmental, like, you really need to get it together. Your time management is terrible. You are never going to be a director because you can't even manage your own work.
Yeah.
That might be the initial feeling, but then it's, the reality is if you want to motivate people, they need to be able to see how what they're doing is going to help them to make, to meet their own goal, whatever it might be. And most people do have, I believe that most people, if they are in the right job, if they are satisfied in the work that they are doing, is because they have a larger plan. They're not just showing up and doing the task you tell them to do and going home. They're doing that task and they are thinking about what they would really like to be doing or what they would like to see different. And if you want people to stay, right, you want to maintain employees over a long time, you want to make sure that they're able to grow in those ways that are important to them.
Really good. Do you have any practical ideas that leaders can use for themselves and their teams when it comes to mental health and promoting a healthy work environment?
Just a lot of the suggestions that I've already shared, allowing for that flexibility and autonomy where you can, allowing for the pursuit of passion, creating space for that, um, helping people to understand that their contributions matter, they matter, they're important to the team, helping people to appreciate that, explaining the why, allowing them to see, and get that buy-in from them. Um, Helping to intentionally connect people so they are not feeling so isolated, especially if they're working remotely, whether that's on, again, like, peer-to-peer mentoring, or whether that's the manager meeting with maybe newer employees and helping to create relationships, finding ways just to build those meaningful in-person connections, I think are important too. Nobody wants to go into the office to sit by themselves. Like, when you have a hybrid environment, you've got maybe you're required to go into the office one day a week. Like, let's make it the same day for everybody. So at least when everyone is in the office, they are getting the benefit of seeing their colleagues there. Or if you're going to have people come in, let's have them doing something meaningful together to, again, promote that engagement. There's a lot of stuff we can do virtually, but there is something special about being all together in person. And there's a special synergy and energy that comes from that, and just those side conversations that you're able to have sitting in the meeting. I know people hate that, but the side conversations you have in the meeting, or the private jokes that you begin to build, all of those things are an important part of the culture that you're trying to create a positive culture in the workspace. And you want to create as many opportunities for that as you can. So you don't just want it to be busy work, like everyone come in for a meeting. You could do a meeting on Zoom. Like, make sure it's something that's not, something more.
Yeah, I love that. So wrapping things up, I guess I don't want to leave this conversation without asking you if somebody at work, if the person listening to this podcast,
Mhm.
they know somebody at work that they're concerned about. Maybe they've seen something that feels like a red flag to them, or maybe they just in general have a concern when it comes to mental health of their colleague. Do you have any suggestions for what they should do?
That's a really tough question, and it probably depends on the kind of work environment and the relationship between the two individuals. Um, I always encourage people to go right to the, if they have the kind of relationship where they can go and ask this other person how they're doing and try to connect and give them that opportunity. If they don't have that relationship, hopefully they have a helpful HR office that they can go to or a supervisor that they're connected with that they can go to and share that concern. What I would encourage them not to do is just to let it go by. So it can be tempting to not pursue something that feels like, oh, it's kind of intrusive and it's really none of my business. It's not their job. It's not, they're doing okay. Um, it's really tough for people to reach out on their own. Sometimes they need that little push. So I would just encourage individuals to try to give voice to what they're observing, whether it's directly with the person, whether it's with their HR office, whether it's with this compassionate supervisor, somebody who's empathetic. Say something if you are noticing something, because chances are pretty good something's really going on with that person. I mean, then you have to be willing to let it go, of course, because it is then it's on them to decide, or it's on the HR person to follow up, or the supervisor, or whatever. But you have done your due diligence in seeking out support for that individual.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
And if anybody is if they're thinking about going into mental health counseling, like a program like yours, or they feel like they might want to go to counseling themselves, what do you have to share with them about how to get connected?
So a good resource for information about counseling in general is the American Counseling Association. It's counseling.org. They have information there, especially, if you're interested in pursuing licensure as a counselor and you want that type of information. They also do have some directory information. The American Psychological Association, the APA, maintains a large directory of mental health professionals. And so that is another excellent resource. They have it. I mean, there are bios available there, links so you can email. They will share, which insurance they cover, all of those types of things. That's another good place. Also, remember that a lot of companies have, an employee assistance program, which might provide a number of free counseling sessions. And so seeking those out as well with your HR office, find out what types of benefits you might have available to you. They are required within an EAP to keep that information confidential. So sometimes people worry that if they share something with an EAP, that is going to get back to their employer. That is, it's not the case. It would be completely unethical for a therapist to release that information. So those would be places I would start. If you meet with a therapist and they are not your cup of tea, you don't feel like you connect with them, find a different one. We're used to it. We're not everybody. You've got to find someone whose style and personality is a good fit for you. The best predictor of good outcomes in therapy is the therapeutic alliance. So that relationship and that connection and feeling of safety to be able to be open, those are really absolutely critical.
So one last question for you. What last piece of advice would you want to offer to somebody who wants to have a voice of influence?
Listen to the other voices. Listen to the other voices. We don't have all the answers. We're not supposed to have all of the answers ourselves. And often those around us have a whole lot to share. My program, I will say, I know is 1,000 times better because of the faculty that I have and my willingness to listen to them and listen to their passion areas and find ways to bring those to the advantage of the program and of our students. Listen to the other voices.
Well, thank you so much, Barb, for being a voice of influence for our listeners today and for me. Appreciate it. And congratulations again on your award.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.